Coming off their big win against the Eagles, the Jets then looked to face the New York Giants. This game was shaky for both teams offensively, as a matter of fact, with the only touchdown being scored by the Jets, a lone 50-yard receiving touchdown by Breece Hall to hold a 7-0 lead for the majority of the game. This didn't hold up, as to the end the Jets were trailing 7-10 with 24 seconds remaining on the clock with one timeout. The Jets would then manage to move down the field with barely any time left to set up a field goal to send the game to overtime. Zach Wilson delivered heavily on this drive, as he had not been too good the entire game, but the Jets would then hold on to win it 13-10 in overtime with the game-winning field goal by Greg Zuerlein. While this game was shaky, a win is still a win. They improved their record to over 500 going into week 9 against the Los Angeles Chargers. On Monday Night Football, with a chance to extend their winning streak and their newfound playoff hopes, they did not deliver. They lost to an abysmal 27-6 final score. This was a horrendous game in that big of a spot for them. Their offense could not move the ball, as they only settled for 2 field goals the entire game. However, after this game, they still had a winning record, sitting at 500 on the dot, with a chance to re-establish themselves as a winning team the next week against the Raiders. It didn't happen in the Raiders game either, and the big problem between the Raiders game and the Chargers game and the Giants game was penalties. They kept allowing penalties to themselves, which led to much more yardage for the other team. It costed the Jets stops on defense. It costed them field positioning due to Thomas Morstead's good punts. It would get shattered immediately by penalties. And the offensive struggles continued for those 3 games. They only managed to put up a combined 28 points throughout those 3 games. And each one they lost. And now their record sat at 4-5 after what seemed to be a chance to make the playoffs, after what seemed to be hope, after what seemed to be a new opportunity, and a chance for the Jets to finally break that streak. Looking to make up for this this losing streak, the Jets then faced the Buffalo Bills, the division rival, who a couple weeks prior they had defeated in the opening night. They looked to improve on offense. They looked to reestablish themselves. They look to prove themselves that they can recover from being a poorly offensive run team. They lost 32-6. They could not manage anything offensively, and the Bills just ripped them apart on offense. The Jets got crushed. And this is the game where Zach Wilson was benched for Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle is an historically awful quarterback. And for them to sit Zach for him really made a statement about what the team thought about him in terms of how they believed in him and how they trusted him as a quarterback to lead their team to win. The Jets would face the Miami Dolphins the next game. With the win, they could improve their record to 5-6 and keep their playoff hopes alive. Keep their chance. They lost that game 32-14. 34-14. The defense held Miami in check, they held them in check for the first half of the game, only allowing 10 points. However, with the Jets down 7-10 with a couple of seconds, they decided to take a Hail Mary play and chuck it to the end zone before halftime. And what happened this play was not an incomplete pass. It wasn't a 60-yard receiving touchdown to put the Jets on top before half. It was a 99-yard pick six to extend the Dolphins' lead to 9 points. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing that the Jets didn't take a knee. It was embarrassing that they were in a good position going into halftime, getting the ball back, and they spoiled it. They had a chance to win, and the second half, they only scored one touchdown, and they allowed 24 points. Really what happened in the span of 3 games is they didn't give themselves a chance to win. They kept allowing mistakes. They allowed mistakes on offense. They didn't pass enough. They ran short plays up the middle with no real aspiration. Their offense struggled. Their offense had been struggling. They have the least amount of touchdowns scored in the NFL. And it did not get better the week after against the Falcons. They only scored 8 points. And they allowed the Desmond Ridder-run Falcons to beat them, which was just the real ender of their season. There was no chance that they in any way could rebound and win out for the season. There was no chance that they could make the playoffs, that they're only scoring 8 points against a mediocre defense. There was no point. And the fact that they were starting Trevor Siemian and Tim Boyle certainly didn't do them any favors. They then played the Texans next week. The hot Texans looking to make the wild card, looking to have their QB CJ Stroud lead in victory, where Zach Wilson was deemed to start. This game, however, was not like the last two in terms of offensive scoring. The Jets would score 30 points and not even 30 points total. They got shut out in the first half and then scored 30 points in the second half, with Zach Wilson passing for 300 yards with 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. The best game of his career. This game was a bit odd in terms of its meaning. They weren't in a position to make the playoffs, but it did keep their season alive for the short time being, and it showed that maybe Zach Wilson had it in him. Maybe there could be some improvement before 2024, where his status with the team is questionable because they benched him. They benched him twice in 2 years for backups, and they just ultimately, as an organization, disrespected him. And the next week, to keep whatever shred of a playoff run they had going alive, they played the Miami Dolphins, and they got shut out 30-0. And that was the dagger on their season. They were eliminated from the playoffs after that day. they just, with their season on the line, they looked like they didn't even show up to the game. Their O-line was allowing sack after sack so badly that Zach got a concussion before halftime and going into the locker room. It was a disaster. And Miami just walked all over them. And they had nothing, no response. And now, after this game, their focus was on the 2024 offseason, the 2023 offseason, and looking to improve their team before next season. However, the season wasn't over yet. They still had 2 more games to play. Collecting a win over the Commanders, and then losing against the Browns. And it didn't matter anyway. This team had hope. This team had a chance. And this team played horribly. The injury of Aaron Rodgers completely shattered whatever hope this offense had. And whatever hope of them being a dominant team. Because the team is built around Rodgers. The offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, is only there because of Aaron Rodgers. He is not a good offensive coordinator. And he's only there because he's familiar with Rodgers. Rodgers is a good enough QB where he can make plays work, but Wilson isn't. So he couldn't reshape the offense, and as a result, the offense didn't show up. The defense was the only silver lining of this season. It was dominant. It held QBs like Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, Josh Allen. He held them all. CJ Stroud. They held them all in check. They showed that they can compete against good teams. The problem was their offense couldn't. So now, going into the 2024 season, the Jets look to improve. The Jets look to find help in the draft for O-line or wide receiver. And they look to progress more and show that they can be a good team under this management, under this QB, under Saleh, under Douglas, under Hackett. They look to improve